Hello everybody! Today we're going to be learning about main clauses, subordinate clauses and how to use them to create complex sentences. For this lesson you're going to need a pen or a pencil and your exercise book or some paper. Pause the video now if you need to go and get any of those things. Before we start our learning today, what do you remember about a main and a subordinate clause? Do you remember what they are and how they're the same or different? Firstly, let's think about a main clause. A main clause is a group of words that contain a subject and a verb and makes complete sense on its own. A main clause could also be called a simple sentence. Can you remember what a subject and a verb is? A subject is who or what the sentence is about, and a verb is a doing or being word. The example you can see here is she crept. She is the subject and crept is the verb. You can see here that the main clause does not include a conjunction, but can include a phrase to add some more information to the main clause. For example, I could add a prepositional phrase of along the corridor to explain how she crept. This is still a simple sentence with one main clause. A subordinate clause is a group of words that add extra information to the main clause. However, it is dependent on the main clause because it doesn't make sense on its own. When main clauses and subordinate clauses are used together to form a sentence, it is called a complex sentence. My example here of a subordinate clause is so that no one heard her. So that is the subordinating conjunction, but this clause would not make sense without the main clause attached to it. Here you can see the complete complex sentence. I have started my sentence with the main clause, she crept along the corridor, and then added my subordinating conjunction and the rest of my subordinate clause. This gives more information to the main clause. I wonder if you can think of a different subordinate clause that I could add to this main clause. In order to write a variety of complex sentences effectively, we need to know a range of subordinating conjunctions. Pause the video and see how many you can think of, and then move on to the next slide. There are many subordinating conjunctions that you could have come up with. Here are some of them. How many did you find? Now we have reminded ourselves what a main and subordinate clause is, our first challenge is to identify which clauses on the screen are main or subordinate. In a second, I'd like you to pause the film and one by one, write the clauses down in your book and then write if they are a main or a subordinate clause. Are you ready? Pause the film and off you go. I've also given you a star challenge if you want to stretch your brain a bit further. Great work everybody. Let's see how you've done. Make sure you tick them if you've got them right and correct them if you haven't managed it this time. Remember, making marvellous mistakes helps us to learn. Okay, question number 1. Josie sat in the garden. That is a main clause. Josie is the subject. Sat is the verb. Number 2. Because it was too late is a subordinate clause. Because is a subordinating conjunction and that does not make sense on its own. Question 3. Even though it was cold. This again is a subordinate clause. Even though is the subordinating conjunction and you need a main clause for that to make sense. Question 4. The dog yelped loudly. This is a main clause because the subject is the dog and yelped is the verb. Number 5. The postman left the parcel on the doorstep. This is a main clause. The subject is the postman and left is the verb. And lastly, number 6, before the campfire was lit is a subordinate clause because before is a subordinating conjunction and we need a main clause for that sentence to make sense. How did you get on? So when we're writing complex sentences, it's important that we use the most effective and appropriate conjunction so that our writing will make sense. So have a look at the sentence on your screen. I've missed out the subordinating conjunction and given you some different options. Pause the video and have a look at the options. Which subordinating conjunction do you think would be the most effective and why? Okay, what option do you think? Let's have a look. Let's start with because. If I put because in this sentence, Lucy's football skills were great because she hadn't been playing for long. It sounds okay, but is it really effective? Is it likely that Lucy's football skills were good because she hadn't been playing? It would be more likely, wouldn't it, that her skills weren't as good if she hadn't been playing long. Therefore, because isn't appropriate. This would be the same for as. So we can eliminate because and as from our choices. What about if? Lucy's football skills were great if she hadn't been playing for long. That doesn't make sense at all. Let's try even though. Lucy's football skills were great even though she hadn't been playing for long. That makes sense. It's surprising that her skills are good if she's not been playing that long. How did you get on with that? Fantastic, everyone. I know that you'll be working really hard. So now that we've thought about using the most effective and most appropriate subordinating conjunction, I'd like you to look at these sentences on your screen. You'll see that there's a blank space for the conjunction. In a second, pause the video, copy the sentences into your book and add in the most appropriate subordinating conjunction. Remember, there may be more than one correct option, so have a think carefully. If you need some help, there's some subordinating conjunctions at the top of the screen, but you can use others as well. Ready? Pause the video and off you go. Okay, everybody, well done. We're going to go through the answers now and you need to tick or correct them as you go along. Remember that there are many different options that you could have put, so I might not necessarily read your option. So if that's the case, maybe you will be able to check with somebody at home. Okay, question 1. The helicopter landed. It was too windy to fly. Now there's a reason why the helicopter landed, so you're probably going to be using because or as. Question 2. We left the room, the argument started. Now there's quite a lot of different subordinating conjunctions you could have used here. You might have gone for before, you left the room before the argument started. You left the room after the argument started. We left the room as the argument started or when the argument started, or even you left the room because the argument started. There's many that work for that sentence. Question 3. The children were still awake. It was midnight. Now you're probably not going to use because or as. It's not the most appropriate because generally children are not awake at midnight. For this answer, I have gone for even though or although because it's a surprising fact. Number 4, I will wait, the last person leaves. Probably the most appropriate answer here would be until. And question number 5, you need to eat your dinner, you want dessert. Probably the most appropriate option is going to be if. Remember, you might have put a different option, so to see if you can check with that with somebody at home. Okay, now that you're experts at complex sentences, your last challenge is to copy these main clauses into your book. Next, you need to add a subordinate clause following on to create a complex sentence. Remember, you need to choose the most appropriate subordinating conjunction and also try to use a variety. Okay, are you ready? Pause the video and off you go. Now, this is less easy to mark because there could be many appropriate answers. What you need to do though is check that after the main clause, you've taken out the full stop, added a subordinating conjunction, and then written your subordinate clause, which wouldn't make sense on its own. So an example of mine could be, the rain fell heavily despite the clear blue sky, or even, the rain fell heavily while the children played outside. There's 2 options that I could have used there. Can you check yours through maybe with somebody at home? Okay, well done everyone, we're nearly at the end of our lesson. To finish off, we're going to check our learning by looking at the sentences that are on your screen. I'd like you to decide which one is the correct and most appropriate complex sentence. Pause the video, decide which one is the right one and why the others are incorrect. Okay, so the most appropriate and correct complex sentence is sentence number 3. We went for a walk is the main clause, although it was raining is the subordinate clause. But why are the others not right? Well, sentence 1 does have a conjunction, but it's not a subordinating one, but is a coordinating conjunction, and there are 2 main clauses there that have been joined together to make a compound sentence. So that is not a complex sentence. Sentence number 4 is incorrect because there should not be a full stop separating the 2 clauses. Sentence number 2 is a complex sentence. However, the conjunction during does not make sense in that sentence. We went for a walk during it was raining. Well done, you've done some great learning today. I look forward to seeing you using the complex sentences in your writing. See you soon.